Really pleased to welcome you all to the first theatre session of day 2 at the Pig and Poultry Fair. Nice to see you all this morning. Our first session this morning is looking at the younger consumers of the future. So looking a little bit as to the data. So what do we actually know about this group of people? What is the demography? What is the difference between school children and Gen Z, the older teenagers and people in their young 20s? And how do we really engage with them through different types of work that we do as a general industry? So we've got a panel of speakers for you this morning. We've got Ros Reynolds, Head of Education at AHDB. We've got Kate Abbey, looking at marketing within AHDB. Debbie Wilson, heading up the LIPS team. And we've got Paul Flynn, Director of Ag at East Durham College. So we'll take you through the data to start with, and then we'll have the rest of the session for general discussion and Q&A, which will open up to the group. So, yeah, without further ado, pass you over to Ros. Thank you.
Thank you, Charlotte, and good morning, everyone. So in the next 20 minutes or so, Kate and myself are going to be exploring this question of what do we know about the consumers of the future and how do we reach them and hopefully inspire them to eat pork. And in answering that question, we thought it'd be useful, first of all, to outline who do we mean by the consumers of the future. And I think it's important also to acknowledge that they're not a single homogenous group. They've got different values, motivations, drivers, and so in recognising that, we actually think it's quite useful to talk about this group in terms of life stages. And that's what we've tried to capture here on this staircase, so a staircase of life stages, if you will. And on that first step, you can see we've got very young children, so 0 to 3 years. And at that age, understandably, parents and families are a key influencer. And then we move on to the school years, so illustrated here on step 2 and 3 in green. So we've got primary school children and secondary school children. And at this age, parents and family continue to be a key influencer. But we've now got the dynamics of school as well in helping shape views, values and understanding as well. And that's the audience that I'm going to be particularly talking about today, those school years. And I'm going to be sharing with you some of the insights that we've got and also talk about some of the work that we at AHDB are doing, but also wider initiatives such as Ladies in Pigs. And then I'm going to hand over to Kate, who's going to talk to you about Generation Z. And this is a really interesting demographic. So they're the first generation to have grown up and been born into a world where they've only known a world with the internet and social media. So the way in terms of reaching and engaging that audience is very different. So Kate is going to share with you what we know about that audience and some of the initiatives that we're working to engage that audience around pork. And then the last of the steps on this chart are young families. Now, obviously, they're key consumers of today, but they also have an important impact on those consumers of the future. And that really kind of takes us back to the beginning of that staircase. But as I say, today we're going to be particularly focusing on school children and Generation Z. So let's get into the detail, and as I say, I'm going to talk to you specifically about school children. And you'll remember on that chart, that staircase, we have primary school and secondary school children. And in terms of population, we're talking about 10 million people. So there's 10 million school children across the UK, almost 9 million of which are in England. So what do we know about this audience and how can we understand them better? Well, earlier this year, AHDB, we worked with YouGov, which are a research specialist, and we spoke directly to almost 660 children aged 6 to 16. And we worked with them to understand what their views were of the world, what their views and what they eat, and specifically what do they think about red meat, including pork. And one of the questions we asked them was about their interest in eating red meat. And the good news is that 70% said that they're interested in eating red meat. And we wanted to drill down into that data a bit more and understand whether there are any differences by age. And we saw that there was a peak in interest at 12 to 14-year-olds. And we can see that it actually does dip down again at 15 to 16. In addition to interest, we were also asking the children about what they learn in schools. And it was really interesting to see when we were talking about practical cookery, this also peaked for children aged 12 to 14. And you can see there that there's a correlation between practical cookery in schools and that interest in eating red meat. So moving on from interest, we then ask the children directly about what they eat and specifically whether they eat red meat. And good news here, so 74% said that they like red meat and they continue to eat it. However, 18% of those surveyed said that they had given up red meat, and 4% said that they'd never eaten red meat. Now, you'll remember I said that this is a population of 10 million across the UK. So if we take that 18% and scale it up, we can see that there's 1.8 million children who's potentially stopped eating red meat. So again, we wanted to drill down into this data and understand some of those motivations and also some of the time frames involved in those 18% who'd given up red meat. So we asked them, when did you give up eating red meat? And this really surprised us because 74% said that they'd given up at primary school age. So the majority had given up at that primary school age. 10% said they could remember at what age, and then 15% at secondary school level. So secondary school is important, but you can see that primary is a key watch out in terms of giving up red meat. So what are the reasons of why that they've given up red meat? Now, number one reason by far and away was that they didn't like the taste. So 45% of those 18% said that they'd given up red meat because of the taste. Now, the second reason was around animal welfare, so concerns about how animals were treated, and that came in at 24%. The third reason was around their parents having stopped buying red meat. So understandably with this audience, it's that influence of their parents. And then coming in at joint fourth, both at 16%, was health reasons. So that's human health reasons and environmental reasons as well. And you can see those reputational topics around animal welfare, around health and environment had given those young people reasons to stop eating red meat, or those perceived reasons of theirs. So in terms of key takeouts from the research, we saw that primary age children, that's a key watch out area in terms of stopping eating red meat. We saw the correlation between practical cookery in schools and interest in eating red meat. And as I say, those reputational topics had been a reason of why children had stopped eating red meat. So as I say, health, animal welfare and environmental reasons. So what can we do to reach and engage this audience and keep those that are already eating engaged in the category and potentially hopefully also encourage some of those that had exited back in? And so I wanted to touch first of all on our education programme, which is Food, a Fact of Life. Now this is an education programme that we deliver in partnership with the British Nutrition Foundation, and it's specifically targeted at teachers. So we work with teachers as a means of reaching that young audience of consumers of the future. So it's really about influencing those influencers. And the programme covers the whole of the balanced plate, so it's not just red meat or not just pork specifically. But we found that being part of a wider programme, we've seen much bigger takeoff of pork and meat resources by teachers. And the programme is designed for teachers of children aged 3 up to 16. And you'll remember in that research we saw that primary was a key watch out. Well, this programme covers that primary age and builds onto secondary school as well. And it covers 3 main topics. So where food comes from, healthy eating and cooking, which relates well back to that research that we saw. And the programme itself covers 2 pillars of activity, and that's illustrated here on the slide. So first of all is the online resources. And the resources are curriculum compliant, they're free to access, and as I say, covers the whole balanced plate, including red meat and pork. And then the other side is around teacher training, and that's really designed for those that are specialist food teachers, but also non-specialist food teachers like primary school teachers. So giving them the skills, knowledge and confidence to deliver the resources in the classroom. And in terms of impact, last financial year we saw over 1.3 million resource downloads from the website. So that's individual resources being downloaded and used in the classroom. And we trained over 620 teachers last year. And then I just wanted to touch on another initiative that we've been involved in over and above the Food, a Fact of Life. And that is around ingredients into schools. So it's a pilot project that we've been delivering. And this is aimed at secondary school students. And we saw in the research the importance of practical cookery and that correlation with interest in eating red meat. But when it comes to practical cookery in schools, there is a real key barrier, and that's the cost of ingredients. And that's particularly heightened when we're talking about high value ingredients such as meat. So we've worked to put meat, and specifically pork, into schools to enable children to cook with that ingredients. So earlier this year, as part of the pilot, we saw 400 students cooking with British pork that AHDB had provided. And we've had fantastic feedback on that pilot project from teachers and from students. And in addition to the pork that we provided, we also provided a recipe for the children to follow. And I just wanted to share some feedback from Harry, who is a student, who's a Year 9 student from Bristol. And he said how much he really enjoyed that recipe and that it tasted amazing. And if you remember back to the research, we saw that taste was a key reason why some people had given up red meat. So if we can get young people to cook and taste pork and think it tastes amazing, that can be really powerful of keeping people in the category. And then I just want to touch on some of the wider initiatives that are happening in the industry. There's some fantastic initiatives that are happening. And I wanted to mention, first of all, Ladies and Pigs. And we've got Debbie on the panel, who's the chair of Ladies and Pigs. And we work very closely with Debbie. And her and her team do some fantastic work out in schools. And that includes practical cookery, looking at careers and everything in between. And Debbie will be able to tell you a bit more about that fantastic work in just a moment. And then Open Farm Sunday, so the annual open day for the industry. And so of the, I think it was 260 farms that opened last year, 23% of those had a pig farming enterprise. And it's a great way of engaging those young families and those consumers of the future and be able to give some of those positive messages around sustainable farming and animal welfare out to that audience. And then access to farms. So that's a partnership across the industry. So it includes Leaf Education, NFU, Country Trust and ourselves. And that's really about promoting quality access to educational visits on farm. And another pilot that we've been running at AHDB is about supporting farmers who might be interested in opening their gates to school visits for the first time. And we've been running a pilot that provides the support, the knowledge, know-how and skills to be able to do that and deliver impactful and safe farm visits. So if that's something that might be of interest to you, please do come and have a chat with me on the AHDB stand after this session, and I'd love to share with you some of our plans over the next few months. And then also agricultural societies. So yesterday we heard from Fergus Howie, who's a pig farmer who's heavily involved with the Essex Agricultural Society and the school farm day that they do. And a lot of the agricultural societies do similar days. And then today we're joined by the brilliant Paul Flynn, who's going to be sharing with you some of the great work that he does at East Durham College with his students and engaging them directly in hands-on activities around pig farming and really demonstrating the quality and care that goes into the pork that's produced. And then lastly from me, I just wanted to mention some of the initiatives of how you could get involved and engage the consumers of the future. And first of all is about helping share the resources that we've got. So I mentioned Food, A Fact of Life, Ladies and Pigs. Help us share those education resources that we've got, including the posters that you can see on the screen. And we've got lots of handouts of those for you to take away as well on the AHDB stand. So you've got your own networks, your own local communities with schools in it. Help us get the word out and spread those to the consumers of the future. But also get involved yourself. So I mentioned the pilot project where we're supporting farmers to open to school farm visits. That might be initiatives that you're keen to get involved in. Or it could be joining Ladies and Pigs or your local agricultural society. So there's some food for thought, and I'm now going to hand over to Kate, who's going to talk about Generation Z.
Good morning, everyone. Following on from Roz's great work that she's doing with school children and school teachers, I want to talk to you about Generation Z. So these are the 18 to 25-year-olds. They're a really important audience for us to target because they represent 15% of the UK population. They are the next generation of consumers. They're also a very diverse group. Some of them are still living at home with their families. Some have gone on to university and sharing a house. Some of them have moved out, started earning some money, making their own choices about food. And some of them might have even started their families and influencing what their children eat. Because they're a really diverse group, they can be quite hard to target. So trying to show you today how we're going to target them to try and eat more pork. So all we know is that they actually under-index in fresh pork at the moment, and they over-index in processed pork. They also have less positive attitudes towards fresh pork, so they don't really see it as easy to cook, versatile or tasty. So we need to really communicate the great benefits of pork to this age group. So first of all, we need to understand a bit more about who they are and their behaviours and attitudes. So obviously, unlike previous generations, they are very digitally savvy. They've grown up with mobile phones, the internet and social media. In fact, we know that they spend an average of 5.9 hours a day on their phones, a lot of them maybe even more. 35% of them spend over 4 hours on social media daily. So it's a real core part of their life. It's where they interact with their peers. It's where they go for kind of fun, engaging videos and information. And 87% of them say that social media influences their purchasing decisions. And that's where they look for recipe ideas as well. So we need to get into those channels to influence them. So how do we reach Gen Z? So we have this information that shows you the different platforms where the Gen Z spend their time. So on the left, you'll see the bigger platforms: YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, Snapchat. That's where they obviously should look for videos or photos. And then on the right, they're kind of the newer platforms like Twitch, which is a gaming platform, BeReal, which is an image sharing platform. This is where they spend their time. In fact, different to other generations, most people look at search for recipes through Google as their search engines, whereas the younger generations, they all type in say food recipes on YouTube. So they've got a completely different way of trying to find that information, and we need to make sure we're represented on those channels. And on these channels, influencers are key. They're the people that Gen Z see as their peers. They trust them, they believe in what they say. So we are trying to work with these influencers to help share the positive messages around pork. So in terms of messaging, we tested 40 different messages about pork with different audience groups to see which ones would encourage them to, or would motivate them to buy pork. So this is the chief, might not be able to see it all, but the chief shoppers, so they're the main family audience. If you have a look, the top messages are about value and taste and versatility. So the top one, pork is good value for money, came out top, and then affordability, and then taste. Whereas Gen Z, the top ones are health. So the top one there is pork provides 9 vitamins and minerals, and then affordability, and then further down is your kind of sustainability messaging. So we know that they have different values when it comes to buying pork. So we then weave those messages into the activity that we do throughout the year on social media. We have our own, obviously, Facebook, Instagram channels, and we have a range of content to keep people engaged in what we're doing. So it's not just a recipe channel. We have obviously got some healthy pork dishes on there and really pulling out the kind of price point, which is really important in the cost of living crisis. So you can have a good meal for £1.50 per portion. We've also got some educational posts about cooking with pork and how-tos, and then we've also introduced our Meet the Farmer series. On the bottom right, you can see Sam Ward there talking about kind of sustainability issues. We've also worked with some influencers. So on the top left, you'll see Mimi from Beat the Budget. She does kind of £20 weekly meal prep recipe videos. They work really well on her channels, and we work with her to promote some new pork mince recipes. And also on there, you'll see some of our other Gen Z influencers. We created a new series called Pick Pork, where each influencer used a different cut of pork and then made their own recipe video and then did it in their own kind of style that would appeal to their audience. And that worked really well. We had some really good engagement on social media for that. We also work with Tasty UK. They're a top foodie platform. And this was working with some influencers.
I'm Zav and this is Zenny, and today we're going to use the pork loin steaks to make some pork, honey and garlic rice bowls. I actually used to make this quite a lot at uni. It was because it was quick and it was actually cheaper than a takeaway.
Oh, wait, a little bit more.
A little bit more? Okay. Yeah, that's fire.
That was a teaser of one of the videos that we did. So it was like a ready, steady cook style video. The influencer would be there, the student come in with their ingredients they brought from home, and they say, oh, what can we make? Oh, let's make an exciting pork dish that you can make for yourself or share with your housemates. Really focusing on affordability, using kind of ingredients that they would find in their kind of student kitchens. And then we also did a series with Lucy, the one on the right, which is promoting more healthier recipes. Again, they did really well. We reached, I think it was 6.9 million throughout that partnership, and we got 46,000 engagements. And we tried to do it in a really fun and engaging and authentic way. And then, so I've lost a slide. Okay. Yes, deleted slide. Okay, so anyway, our Meet the Farmer stories, where we were trying to promote sustainability and farming. We'd be really keen, if you know of any farmers who would like to share their stories about the environment, do come and talk to us on the stand afterwards, because Gen Z really want to hear from you and the great work that you're doing for British farming. We can come to your farm and film, or you can do some filming yourself, and then we can edit the videos and put them together. But it's something we really want to explore more. And then also we'd love to get you to follow our social channels. So that QR code, you can either scan it now or later. That takes you to the marketing page on the AHDB website, where you can follow our channels, share our content, and really help promote Great British Pork. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Kate and Roz. So we're now going to open the floor for questions, but before we do that, I just want to make sure that we introduce Debbie and Paul and some of the work that they're involved in. So if I go to you, Paul, firstly, can you just explain to us what it is about your college in particular that that is engaging this Gen Z audience? It should be on. Can you all hear through the... Oh no, we can't hear.
Just turn my mic on. Thank you. That sounds like it's a bit more convincing. Yeah. Well, good morning. Nice to be here. Thank you very much for the opportunity. Great to be with AHDB. It's been a long journey for us at East Durham College. We are relatively new to pig production. We're really a sheep and beef farm. We're imposters here, but the pigs have been in a really good, fun journey. It's become a great and popular teaching resource. We operate, and this is thanks to Tony and the work of HDB, a 3-week system. So we're farrowing every single 3 weeks with 3 or 4 sows. The students really enjoy that. It's something they look forward to, and there is an issue with crowd control when it comes around to farrowing, so we have to be a bit mindful of that. Mm-hmm. What we're finding for us is that they just enjoy the bigger story, that actually when students begin to get to know us quite well, we see a lot of primary school students, a lot of university students. We had Newcastle University last week, a great big coach load. Really diverse Gen Z typical audience. I mean, thank you very much for putting that sort of case across. A really good example. You know, we had no complaints whatsoever from any student, and that included a fairly large contingent of vegan, vegetarian, kind of an audience that we thought might be a bit tough. They liked what we do, and I think that's been the thing that we've celebrated most is focusing on what the customer wants. And for us, it's been about just being really sharp on, attention to detail. Again, Tony's help getting things right in terms of the science, the procedures, getting our nutrition right, there's some amazing help out there today. Go and speak to them and get them involved with your farm. For us, it's been the feedback from students has been they like the attention to detail, they like the feeding, the nutrition, the science. They like that our staff care so much. I didn't expect that, I have to say. They're a nice bunch, but it was their attention to detail that they liked. we are probably more experienced as sort of lambing and calving, and so we still can't resist the idea of being involved in farrowing and involved in the whole process, and we do check every couple of hours on that process. And they like the sort of, we're deep straw based, and we're open farrowing. The sow can take her time and build a nest, and and sort of be relatively free to enjoy that process. And those are all the things that add up. But I was just saying earlier before to Charlotte that actually it's also about the entire farm operation. We're attempting to be a very sustainable, very high welfare farm. So our cropping, we're almost entirely home fed. Again, we work with Kingsgate Nutrition Faymerch. Thank you to her. We try and really work on starting with the farm's own feed first, and only buying whatever we need as a very minimum. We're trying to step away from any purchase feeds if we can, and be fully accountable for what we do. And again, student feedback is that they like that very much. It's changed the farm. We now grow more beans than ever before because that's what pigs need most. It's great protein. And so that's actually impacted our carbon footprint, our total nitrogen use, and that's really encouraged us to go further and to begin to think about how else we can improve our diet and our farm as a whole. We engage very broadly with a whole set of partners. We are very lucky in a way, being an educational establishment. I can spend the time working with universities, with partners, with businesses, and we're building up a nice sort of body of folk that can work with us to improve our act. I think it's demonstrating a constant desire to improve what we do and be on a journey all the time to improve our farm. That's, again, I think hitting home with Gen Z. I know a bit about Gen Z. I've got a 26-year-old and a 22-year-old, and influencing them is difficult enough. Trying to persuade a customer to start to buy pork is something, not easy, but, I just have to celebrate the work that you've done already. I think you're absolutely smashing and sort of bang on with what you've done. I think it is about giving those cooking skills, about making sure that young people know what to do with it. Fair play. And I don't know what else I can say, but yeah.
Do your students spend 6 hours on their phone every day? On social media?
Yeah, mostly in my lectures, but it's that worries me. I mean, I think about my son. I think it's at least 6 hours. Sorry, Tom, but that's the challenge. They're being informed by somebody else. The fact that that AHDB is taking part in that journey and being on YouTube and being current and present with that argument. We have to stand up for ourselves. We're competing against a generation that eats at least 54% processed food, highly processed food. This is not food, according to Chris Van Tulliken. Highly processed people. This is an edible industrial product. It's not even food. So we're already competing for just half of that market. And let's just stand up for ourselves and, not be afraid to say, look, this is a really nutritious food. It's absolutely fundamentally unprocessed. It's good for you. It's an amazing sort of piece of nutrition.
And I think one thing you were saying as well, Paul, is that actually, let's not overcomplicate it in terms of engaging this group of people. The things that you've observed them being really interested in is just watching pig behaviour. As simple as that. They're simply looking at what's in the feed and how they're interacting, really.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we were lucky enough to buy our own feed mill, and even that seemed to attract some attention. And a lot of it's funny. The college is quite a mixed bag. It's not just agrics, old-fashioned sort of agrics. It's also the whole wealth of land-based courses. So we're animal management, arboriculture, forestry, land and wildlife, and those students are also quite interested in what we're doing. And when they see that we take so much care and detail over, for example, the beans, we mill down to a spec within 0.1 mil. The barley, we don't. It requires a very different approach. We blend and mix our feeds according to our, the advice we've been given. And again, that just seems to hit home that, if I'm going to buy this meat, I'm now convinced that what you've done with it before I got there is pretty genuine and pretty much in my best interests. And they love the fact that we are making the most of homegrown feed as well.
Thank you. I'll introduce Debbie now. So Debbie, you actually have a teaching background, don't you? How important do you see the work actually going into schools directly with regards to the students and the teachers?
We actually have primary and secondary provision. We started off with a primary provision many years ago, and we've built that up. And it's about the children understand where food comes from and again, the welfare and what we do. We have a split session. They do a cooking session to start with, and then we do a meet the farmer, so similar to Sam, but a lot of our ladies are directly involved in farming in one form or another. And we don't just showcase pork, we showcase all of the red tractor and high welfare food that's produced in this country.
Lily would be pleased at the back there.
So we support all of the food producers, and we show them a variety of different processes of how food gets from the farm to the table, and we match up really well with that, and we're now starting to expand our careers and secondary provision, as you mentioned earlier, so that we're talking to them about the raft of different jobs that are out there and career paths. Farming's not just if you're not academic anymore. This is, we're trying to emphasise the fact that they need their STEM subjects. Just for a basic farm labouring job, you need to know your basic STEM out there, but that there's careers working from degree level as well, and that there's a really good path out there for them.
Thank you. And the importance of engaging with teachers as well. That's a lot of your work, isn't it?
Yeah. We've got some. I'm always a storyteller. We have some interesting stories to tell about when we work with teachers, and what our way of doing this is in my teaching profession. There's a lack of knowledge of again where food comes from. Some of our teachers are Gen Z. Some of the newly qualified, and they have no idea at all about how that food's got there. So we have some quite surprising questions, or lack of knowledge. So it's while we're talking and having a fun activity with the youngsters, the teachers are our secondary audience. So we're covering two at once. It's really good.
Have you got any findings, from doing that? Are there any tips for anyone else wanting to engage with that teacher network? And maybe we can go to others on the panel as well on that.
I think the being authentic and telling them how farming is, and it is a struggle. I'm a producer's wife as well as what I do with Ladies in Pigs. So I know about when we have a hard frost. We spent all day Christmas Day about 6 or 7 years ago. Getting fresh water to the pigs, and it's that importance of that level of detail you mentioned, all about the level of detail. And my husband was crying at the end of the day because he was exhausted, but he was frustrated that on a day when he wanted one of the days in the year that, weather permitting, you can spend with your family, and he spent it all day with the pigs. But that's our professionalism and our passion for what we produce and put on the table. So we try and be authentic with them. We don't shy away from questions. We will, if it's not age appropriate, we will say to the teacher or the child, that's not age appropriate for this audience. Sometimes it might be that the questions come from an adult at home. You can tell by the age of child that's asking the question that somebody's got a bit of an agenda maybe, but we're very respectful of that, and we just say, we don't feel that's appropriate, or we talk to them out, separately, or we speak to the teacher and they deal with it. But it's about being us, being true to to the passion of what we've got in our industry.
Thank you, Debbie. Did you want to make any comments on the teacher element as well?
Yeah, I'd just really reiterate what Debbie was saying there about being authentic, and what we're trying to do with our training as well is give teachers the opportunity to hear directly from farmers and experience it directly. So a conference that we held earlier this year, we did at Harper Adams University. It was very hands-on, lots of interactive sessions, but one of the particular highlights was going around the university farm there that does have an indoor pig unit. Many of you will know that. But actually then listening to the teachers actually after that and saying, how happy and healthy the pigs looked. And that might have been a bit of a surprise to them, but they hadn't actually seen kind of farming up close and personal like that. And it's actually being able to give them the opportunity, because as I said earlier, in terms of influencing that influence, because then they can go into the classroom and talk confidently with their students about pig farming.
Thank you. Any other comments? I don't know, Paul, if you wanted to comment on from a teaching perspective. Yeah, thank you. I'll open it up. Any questions from the audience? Lily. Thank you.
Hi, my name's Lily Chandler. I'm currently working at Red Tractor, so very interested in all of the above. But I'm a Harper Adams placement student as well, so really interesting to hear that you're at Harper earlier this year. Will you be coming back next year? Just a quick question, because I'll probably be around then.
Well, it was a great day, and I know that a lot of the teachers there have done follow-up sessions as well, so that was one of the great things. So we hope to work with Harper Adams in the future, definitely. So, but as I say, I know there's a lot of the teachers who've then taken their school pupils there as well, so they do some great outreach.
Oh, that sounds great. My question really was, what is your reach with schools? Do you have any particular statistics or numbers of how many schools you've reached, how many pupils you've reached in the UK? Apologies if I missed it, if it was in the slides.
No, that's fine. So, I mean, it's one of the challenges we've got, because with the Food Effective Life education programme, we've tried to remove any barriers from people accessing it. So we don't collect data in terms of what school they've come from, they don't have to register. That's something we're looking at actually as we look to kind of update the website. But we've got over 400,000 users of the website, so unique users. So that does give us a bit of an indication. But yeah, that's something that we're trying to get, because it's getting that balance of making sure that there's no barriers to access.
Yeah, that sounds great. And also, will you be doing anything within universities as well as what you're doing within schools? I know myself as a Harper Adams student, it's a bit different. We already have the exposure to farming and things like that. But is there anything that you'll be doing with universities in other areas to educate Gen Zers like myself on pork production?
Yes, it's something at AHDB we're definitely looking at, and Kate might be able to say a bit on this as well. So at the moment we don't with our education programme, but we recognise that is a real opportunity to say it's not just those students that are studying agriculture or related subjects. But we are looking at as well in terms of meal provision in schools, so we're talking to some of the university caterers, because I know there's kind of messages there around that meat is perhaps removed off some of those university menus, but actually working with them, we've heard actually that's not the case, and actually we're looking at how we can work with them more closely to get some of the positive message out. But I'm sure Kate's probably got something to say on that as well.
I think we're looking at how we target universities through the BNF, looking at some trial projects with them. At the moment, we've not really tested that field, but it is something obviously we would want to tap into as part of the wider Gen Z work that we're doing. We are also doing a separate project for dairy. Again, if that's got some really good positive learnings from that, we can then obviously apply that to the pork sector and see if that can be transferred across. So we're just kind of trying different things at the moment, because as you said, it's such a diverse audience and we've only got so much budget to play with and capacity within the team. But obviously, yeah, we are seeing some really good results within the pork sector, so it is something that will be on the agenda at some point, hopefully.
I mean, one thing we've tried to do is to influence local food procurement. So we're working with Durham County Council on their Food Durham group, and I guess across the entire country there are similar opportunities to influence food procurement. The other one we do, of course, is to actually try and speak to all of our customers. We go through the market, and then I will go and sit down and chase up on Facebook or wherever and just get some feedback. How was that? Was that okay? Was it good enough? Can we do better? There are lots of ways to try and attack that sort of procurement sort of aspect. And of course, these are very long-term things, often 5 or 10-year contracts. So we've got to be in there, of course, as well.
Sorry, just to add to that, where one of our plans going forward, we've done we've been to Harper Adams and done like open events, so the open days and talking to students, and we're trying to look at how we can broaden that project, so have a visible, get the van there, do some food prep, do some of the recipes. Again, we use some of the Love Pork recipes, and we've got our own recipe leaflets as well. So we are hoping to build that presence, not just at Harper, other universities and colleges across the UK. But it's a capacity thing as well. So it's a slowly catch a monkey kind of thing that we're going to try and do.
Thank you. At the back, and then we've got one here. Thank you.
Hi there, my name's Olivia Cooper. I was just wondering what you would say, given the biosecurity threats, the concerns over being attacked on social media, for farmers who consider themselves just a normal pig farmer who is quite keen to get engaged, maybe open their doors, but they're just really worried about all of that stuff. What would you say to them?
Who wants to take that? Do you want to take that first, Paul? And then maybe we'll go to the farming ambassadors.
We're probably one of the most vulnerable farms for that. I mean, we have our doors open all the time, but I think it's one of our best antidotes is that the doors are wide open. We can demystify the suspicion, the questions, by being completely open. We are, I suppose, quite fortunate in that, our first and foremost job is to provide education. So that provides, I suppose, most of our funding. And any pig farmer will tell me that, Paul, you don't have the same pressure. So, we're able to offer a very, very high welfare system based on a lot of space, a lot of room. You really are chasing best practice. I think we have more room for a farrowing pig than she really actually compromising her own welfare because A, they're too cold, and B, the pigs are too far away. And we do sometimes try and limit that space. But I think the answer, is that word demystify, open the doors, let the consumers see what you've got. And if they don't like it, they will tell you. But try and respond to that and try and sell, not just the meat, but try and explain and sell your entire story about what your farm is doing and be accountable and join in. There are, some opportunities. I know people are really busy and working incredibly long hours, but if you've got that luxury, try and network with others and share and gather together to build your story if you can.
How do you overcome some of the biosecurity and the health and safety stuff? Can you give some tips as to how you kind of structure that type of visit?
I stand on the gate and stare until they give in. I'm actually this is I don't know, is it me?
I'm not sure.
I'm just about to try and refit another biosecurity layer. So, well, we've got biosecurity coming onto the farm. I want another set of biosecurity as we come into the pig unit, and I'm really worried that we don't have that. We actually have a catering service on site. It is largely our own pork, but I worry that one day we will see, the risk of swine fever coming in. And I know Tony and I both share the same sort of fear that every day we run that risk, and I guess that's the price of being so open and so, so inclusive. I think our record this year was over 200 students working on the farm, actually hands-on, within 1 week. That takes a lot of doing, and we have to think about both washing and disinfection. In terms of social media, I've just not seen that kind of so far so good. Just not seeing those sorts of accusations or that sort of effect. If it happens, I guess just answer the questions honestly, show people what you're doing. Try and be rational and listen, I suppose.
Thank you. Do you want to go next, Debbie? Okay.
Hi. Yeah. I'm a small producer's wife, so my husband is very reticent. He's very proud of what he does, but he is concerned about that element of letting people onto the farm and being aware of it, of what he's doing. But he's very proud of what he does as well. So I kind of have both hats on this. I think like Paul said, and I'm sure Kate will say the same, if we've got the procedures in place, you're doing the right thing from all day, every day, you've got something to be proud of. And that's the overriding thing, is as an industry, we've got to be proud of what the food we're producing, how it's produced, and the dedication of every part of the industry. So I think if your procedures are in place, there's not a lot to worry about. And like you say, you've got to head it off. I have had some backlash in the past from being high profile. I did a TV appearance early in my reign in Ladies in Pigs, and we got some quite severe and vile messages directed personally at me. But there are procedures in place. It's now an offence, or it started being an offence for abuse on social media. So I went straight to the police and got a crime number, and it was taken seriously. But I think again, you've got to, if you're being authentic, if you've got that backup, and that what you're doing is correct, I think you're good to go.
And I guess the farming ambassadors is a way of us trying to help reduce risk to the industry, isn't it? Do you want to just give a feel for what the feedback has been from the ones that we've done so far? Well, the one we've done.
Yep, is this on? So we've done some stories with Rob McGregor. So we did 4 videos, one about like the eco homes that the pigs are housed in, one about water, the grass that feeding the pigs, and they were received really well on social media. We didn't have any kind of negative comments. People were actually really engaged, asking questions like, do the eco homes survive strong winds? Do they get condensation? So it shows people were engaged and engaged enough to ask questions. And our social media agency can look at which audiences are engaging with different posts, and they were very popular with Gen Zs, also with males specifically. So that was a good test into the kind of what messaging works. We're also doing the Sam Ward Lincolnshire Pork Company shoot at the end of this month. And we've got a nice, again, we're going to have some videos, one about pig welfare, one about sustainability and kind of how they're powering the farm. So the more we try and promote the positive stories of what farmers are doing, we can help counteract all the negativity and, the fears that that any other farmers, are worrying about when they get involved. The more we promote the positive stories, we can kind of lessen the negativity. But we have to obviously work as an industry to do that. So do come and approach us if you feel that this is something that you're interested in, and we can help support you in looking at the best way of telling your story.
Thank you. And there is support as well from a media perspective. So there is back, as an industry, we've got some good people who do a lot of media training and things like that. So I think it's important to engage with people like that can give a bit of a perspective as to what a lay person might see as well. So yeah, I think do tap into those networks. We had a question here at the front, didn't we? Got a mic here.
Hiya, yeah, thank you everybody, that was really interesting. Not a dissimilar question to what's been asked, so apologies, and sorry if I missed it on the slide as well. Ros, I think you mentioned one of the main sort of factors for primary age children giving up meat was the welfare sort of associations and connotations and perceptions. And Kate, the 40 statements that you guys looked at to see the impact of those, was there any welfare related statements in that mix, and how impactful were they? And I'm sorry if I missed it, I just couldn't pick any out from the...
Yeah, we had sustainability came right at the bottom as their motivations. There was a few different things. I think there's one about soya feed. It's one about us, how much carbon emissions there are within the industry. It kind of wasn't of relevance to the Gen Z. It was more about health and value. They were the key things that were pushing them in their purchasing decisions. Doesn't mean they're not of importance, they're just a lot further down. So yeah, the key things that we are pushing in our campaigns are health and affordability, because that's what's going to nudge them at the point of purchase. And they might choose certain meats over another based on those. But again, people are still concerned about the environment and what's going on farms. And again, we're telling those stories through the other work that AHDB is doing in general and what the industry is doing. So it is still of importance. We are still doing it in our social channels, like we said with the Meet the Farmer series. It was just not top priority, for those groups.
Thank you. And that begs the question, doesn't it, whether, as an industry, we ought to be selling much more about the health and environmental benefits. But it was quite surprising, the data that you showed, Ros, because at a very, very young age, welfare is at the top of the list, isn't it? So how do you balance the two in terms of engagement? Got to feel maybe the others to the panel as well.
Yes, you're right. In terms of the data I showed you was of all school children, and that obviously, in terms of animal welfare, came out as the kind of second reason. Actually, I think after today I'm going to drill down into that data and see how it splits out by primary and secondary school children. But yeah, in terms of our work, the schools, obviously there's a lot of positive messages we can give out. So Red Tractor was mentioned. We also talk about all the kind of standards that are used across the industry, and allowing children to recognise those and what they mean on pack, because it's getting that message out on the communication behind those, RSPCA or Red Tractor, what they actually mean.
Thank you. And is that chiming maybe to Paul and Debbie? Are those values chiming with you? Do you see that same list of priorities, I suppose, when you engage with those different age groups?
So one thing we find when we do our Meet the Farmer part of our sessions with the primary age children, is we show them images. So we've got dairy farmers, we've got chicken farmers, show them videos, and within there it's very clear about the welfare side of the job and what we're doing. And we ask the children to tell us what they can see in the picture, so that we've got a picture of a dairy farmer stroking the cow's face, and so they can see it's farmed with care. We always link to the we say, have they seen the advert on television saying about being farmed with care? They get lots of dojo points if they can remember what the end frame is. So we're always about pushing that the welfare is really at the top of our message that we're giving them. And again, we predominantly talk about red tractor, but we also talk about the red line with eggs and RSPCA because of the differing labels and what's out there in the for the parents when they're buying things.
Thank you.
Yeah, I suppose we're lucky. I'm thinking, from this conversation, what we've got, I suppose, is almost an immediate feedback panel of 850 students who see what we do every day, and we're led by them, and the farm's job is not just to provide for the agricultural students, it's for the entire campus. So we have to reflect their needs as well and make sure that what we're doing is acceptable to them. We're proposing to slightly step up the intensity a little bit, not too much. And the question is, well, is that acceptable to them? And we actually sell a lot of our meat through the school. We've got 3,500 students, we've got 800 teachers. It's a major part of our market, and that, I don't want to jeopardize that. So we're very lucky in having that immediate loop of feedback, and in a way, I suppose it's a little microcosm of what you're trying to do with a much bigger audience. And in that way, it's quite useful to know where they stand.
Thank you. Anyone else? Are there any other questions from the floor? One here, and then I think we might have to switch around. Yeah, this gentleman. Thank you.
Thank you to all our speakers this morning. So, I'm Tom Bunt from the Rare Breed Survival Trust. So I sort of represent all of our native pig breeds, which I appreciate is a small proportion of what we've talked about today. But I think there's a bit of an opportunity there to sort of talk about our native pig breeds, and you've talked a lot about the story and things, and obviously they have their unique story and the environmental benefits they're being used on, and the systems, and obviously the conservation element between obviously promoting the breeds, increasing the numbers, and obviously one way of doing that is encouraging more people to actually consume the produce as well. So I think a lot of what we talk about within the pig industry is very much sort of generic, just obviously pork, but I think there is an opportunity there, as we've seen successfully with other species. Look at the Aberdeen Angus and Hereford schemes and things. I mean, there's opportunity there to focus on breed-specific work as well.
One of the initiatives we do is working with East of England Agricultural Society, and we'd go into schools and do a comparison between a supermarket sausage that they may well get, that is a wider available, and a rare breed sausage as well. So we're giving them from age 4 up to 11 the opportunity to taste that difference in the market, what's out there, and we talk to them about where they can get hold of the that differential of taste. It's quite interesting that it's maybe a deeper flavour, so that it's not the favourite at that age, but we're introducing that. We are directly working with students at a very young age on that, and getting the message out there that there's two different, there's lots of different ways to eat high quality pork.
Yeah, well, thank you, Tom. Good to see you here. I mean, we are guilty as charged. I think we'd be your best customer to really push the Rare Breeds Society, and we probably, given our market size, we are well placed probably to go down that route. And we have discussed this and said, well, really, should we not just entirely focus on retail sales only and go down that route of a rare breed? I think our only hesitation is the sort of market for that, and making sure that what our buyer wants is something that exactly meets their needs. And we work very hard to look at carcass conformation, fat content, fat cover. But we have been working. We've dipped our toe in the water once or twice, and we've had a couple of boars that have been pedigree, and so we market that as a pedigree cross. I suppose you might complain about that and say that's not really fair, but we're looking and listening to that question, and I guess I recognise and sort of respect the work you're doing, and I really value that. And I think if we can find a way to support you, and perhaps we are as part of a Landex, the Land-Based Colleges Association, we probably together should be talking with you and looking at how we can best support you. We've got Angus beef. We do okay with that. In fact, we've had a fantastic spring. We've not assisted a single cow so far, touch wood. Only issue so far is 2 calves that were still wet, just been born, and we couldn't catch them. But that's all.
Thank you. Any other questions before we let everybody in for the next session? I just wanted to say it's really nice to see you all this morning. Thank you so much for coming to this session, for all your contributions. Thank you to our speakers. We will be around for a while on the stand. Come and grab resources. Ladies and Pigs are also over there. Might be some sausage rolls still left, so everyone's welcome. And have a good rest of the day at the show. Thank you again to speakers. Thank you. Thank you, guys.